Hello, hello, hello. We are back. We are hosting Brilliance on another Monday with your girl, your host, the Queen Educator, Robin Queen. Hi, that's me. And I'm so super duper 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 excited today because I have one of my dearest friends and the most amazing guests who I met whenever I was in the college, when I was in the school system. And I'm so excited to bring her on. She is so dope. Wait till you meet her and find out all the amazing things that she does. We have Miss Candice Echols today, honey. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her and where she comes from, who she is. But before I do, I like to just jump right in because, I just like for everybody to just say hello. I would like her to say hello to the people. So I'm about to bring her right here. Everybody, please welcome Miss Candice Echols.
Hey, everyone. Thank you, Robin, for having me. Queen.
Say hello to the people, my darling. Let them know where you're coming from right now.
Well, I guess on any given day, I hail from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, lifelong resident, and just happy to be here. I may physically be in one space, but just most people know me at any moment in my mind, I can transcend and be in any other place. But that's where I am right now.
Yes. Hey, I'm so happy you're here. I hear like I don't know if you do.
I do not. It's just you're going in and out a smidge, but I don't hear an echo.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're all straight. Can you hear me better now? Are we good?
It sounds great.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so guys, we are here and we are talking about how can we teach with truth and purpose through culturally responsive education. And this is a topic that I don't like to talk to everybody about. I really don't. Because I find that sometimes it has become a jargon, like just words that we say, or a checklist that we do in our schools and classrooms and life. We talk about cultural relevance and competencies and sustaining practices, and we talk it, but we don't always walk it. So I have Miss Candice Echols herself. She is, to me, somebody who I look up to in this work, who talks it, walks it, works it, does it in all aspects of her life, inside and out. Like even her business is based on her family. So I just want to just I'm setting the stage for you all to really open your hearts and your minds and your ears for my guest today, because she is about to drop some stuff for you all that will transcend your mind and your thinking about cultural relevance and truth and purpose within it. So let's get started.
All right. Well, before I say anything, I definitely want to say this because I am currently connected to entities. Mm-hmm. I just like to say that my views are my own, my opinions are my own, and they are not in any way representative of my employer or any other organizations that I'm affiliated with. So this is just coming straight from Candice Echols.
Yes, I appreciate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start with your journey, right? So as you're speaking about cultural relevance and truth and purpose, how did you get to a space, Candy, and I call her Candy because that's my nickname for her, but it's but how did you get to a space where you became passionate about this? Maybe share a little bit of your journey. And so I'm going to solo you here and mute myself.
Sure. So I do think it's important to put the backstory because, again, as we speak about being culturally relevant, we do want to get to the hearts of the people that are in front of us. And any time that we're entering in any type of ship, and it's our intention for it to be long lasting or anything, we do think about how can I connect. So we connect by getting to the very heart of a person. So anyway, I have to frame it in that what kind of got me to this space stems out of trauma. Coming up through elementary school, middle school, high school, I had wonderful educational experiences. People who recognized my gifts and always pushed me to do better, go beyond, involving me in things. But once I got to higher education, which I attended the Pennsylvania State University at main campus, it was different. And that was my first experience where people in front of you, people there to educate and pour into you, always are not about you. They don't particularly necessarily care about you. And it was a shock to me. And so not just at a surface level, but that my identity began to be weaponized. And I say that because being in a setting where I was the minority in the space, I was always forced to play the role of the expert for the groups that I represent. And initially, I responded in kind, just being the obedient person that I am, that I responded, but it made me feel uncomfortable. And so the more that it occurred and the more uncomfortable I became, it was an issue for me. And I began to speak with people outside of that space. I mean, I did have two really great advisors there who went to bat for me when necessary. That's a whole different story in regards to these issues. And that's when I first felt like, no, we're not doing this. And so I did, finish out my time there with much resistance on my part. But as I came into the classroom, my first thought was, I want to go back to the schools where I grew up. Because now coming back with that lens that was a bit more tainted than it was when I left, I began to see the space where I lived, my community, and the schools way different. And I started to recognize some things that didn't set well with me coming up through my education training. And so at that point, is where I said, I'm going to hinge everything on my relationships with the kids, my relationship with the families, my relationships with my colleagues. And so coming in, the great thing was I could literally say to a lot of my students, I know your grandma, I know your mom, because we had grown up together. And so with that connection there, a lot of times I was given the license to Ms. Echols, well, I wasn't Ms. Echols then, Ms. Leonard. Ms. Leonard, do what you need to do, whatever you need to do. And so that gave that comfort level of just, not always being this pent up, buttoned up teacher now in front of the classroom, but being more of myself, bringing in my authenticity, my child rearing, what I experienced, because I know my parents and my family did a fabulous job. And so I wanted to share that because not everybody, was privy to that. And so as the comfort level grew and increased, then I can go right into my natural practices of, management, of disciplining with dignity, and still felt good that at the end of the day, or right after correction, a kid would say, I love you, Miss Echols. I love you, Miss Leonard. I love you too, baby. But, and these are the behaviors. And so I always felt good walking away, being able to do that. So just really quickly, fast forwarding to the very first time when I was in an environment where maybe the colleagues there did not hold that same ideology, but I still had the same students that reflected me and my background and my culture. I still did me, but there was a lot more pushback. And I couldn't understand the reason why someone would want to push back on what I was doing that was filling up and preparing and being dignified with the students. When, I've had that back experience to show that, I still had students 10, 15 years out calling me, emailing me, saying, Ms. Echols, I still remember this and that. And so what it was that it was really a separation of our ideologies and practices in place. And then further jumping to the first time that I was in an environment where it did not reflect my cultural upbringing, where again, there was such a disconnect because what was valued was different. And so then I had to be more mindful, more studious about, more clear about how to approach it.
I'm trying to unmute myself. I'm like, it's like, no, you can't unmute another guest. I'm like, that's me. Okay, it happens. We keep it moving. All right. Okay. You mentioned some amazing, amazing things that I want to go back to. First of all, thank you for sharing your story and your journey so authentically and transparently is really what I'm trying to say here. Because it's when you deal with trauma, that's a lot. And then to tell it, like you already dealt with the trauma, you went through it, all that, and then to tell your story, it's a lot of like healing that had to probably be done. So I appreciate you taking the time here today to share your story, but also taking the time you did to just learn from all of the trauma that you did receive, learn from all of the great things you received, and make sure that you were going to make things better and do differently.
Yes.
That's beautiful. And that's why when I talk about hosting brilliance, that's a portion of what I talk about. People who know how to overcome challenges and actually how to teach other people and recreate experiences for other people so they don't go through the same things.
Yes.
So essentially, that's what I believe that you did, and I appreciate that. You mentioned something though, when you talked about your experience, you talked about relationship, and I want you to go in a little bit on that. How did you get to a place where you found that relationships were the key thing when truly teaching with truth and purpose through and being culturally relevant, even after what you went through? You may not have seen that too much. Like, talk to me a little bit more about relationships and how that plays a key part through your journey to now.
Sure. So I'm sure as any of us who are in the education field would know, those first experiences out in the world, like, kind of get a little stage fright initially. It's like, these people, I have to command their attention all day. I mean, I started in kindergarten, and no, it was not half day kindergarten. And so my first thought was, commanding their attention, not just one or two or three like I was used to, in previous experiences, but at this time I had 30 plus kids. And so I had to really find a way that, one, allow me to identify all of them, because, you kind of give yourself that strict timeline. I need to know everybody's name by the end of the first week of school, so trying to find, whether it be a mnemonic device or some mannerism that they had that you remember and that you incorporate. And again, this is mid 90s, early 90s. And so this is prior to any of these coined phrases and practices, being there. It's just instinct. And so, and because I truly love the thought of teaching, I mean, I left mechanical engineering to come over into teaching because I wanted to be with children, and so, and also with me being the youngest one in my family, it's just, that connection, that desire. So one, I just straight desired it from my heart to have relationship. I came up, I remember my grandmother saying that you don't really give your energy to everyone unless you intend to have relationship, some type of relationship. And so that's my mindset. Like, I'm not going to toy with anyone. I'm not going to pretend as though I don't see you or that your presence doesn't matter. If you're in my presence, it matters. And so while we're here, it's just going to be a mutually enjoyable experience. And so basically, it was just really wanting to have relationship with the kids, especially knowing that I knew their families in some way. I'm not going to disappoint them. They came to me for a reason, and that was to be prepared and educated and gain experiences so that they could be better prepared moving on. And I needed to make sure I did that.
I appreciate that. I really do. And I think when we were talking earlier, and we talk all the time, something that really stood out to me, that now I want to make that connection, like to have that type of character, to have that type of mindset around building relationships and creating the things that you created out of your whole story. It reminded me of something you said. You said everything has meaning. And I even think about, you said you were a kindergarten teacher. So was I. I love kindergarten. You're another guest that has taught kindergarten, and I love it. And I really do think it takes a special heart for someone to be a kindergarten teacher. I think when I met you, you were writing curriculums and or some. Actually, I probably met you before this, but we were coaching together. But you were focused on something in kindergarten. You were creating a better experience for the teachers to use the curriculum to reach the students, right? Because you had already went through it. And the point I'm getting at is that whole portion of the everything has meaning, and for you to be able to not only be a teacher, which is amazing, but also be a coach, but also be a curriculum writer, but you know what I mean, and bring your experience to life within everything that you do. How does that connect with your family? How does that connect with what you do now? Talk to us a little bit more about this everything has meaning mindset. And I have you on. Here you go. There you go.
Okay. And again, I come to this space not professing to be a guru on anything. Most what I do comes out of need and purpose. And so again, with that meaning thing. And so at the time when, working with the tools that are provided us in the profession, if something doesn't work, I need to do something with it to whether it be enhance it or, so I'm going to definitely do my just do and doing what I'm told to do, but my commitment is to the students. And so if I have to develop something, find something, tweak something or whatever it was, then I would do that to make sure that they're successful. So, in saying that part, it probably, was relating to that to where, and this isn't in a boastful way, but this is just how I assess myself in that most places where I've worked, teachers in higher grades would always say, I know which kids came out of your room. I want the kids to come out of your room. Mm-hmm. And so that also gave like another meaning to this statement of everything has a meaning. So that meant like the slightest thing that I did with students had an impact. So it was whether it was going to be a negative impact or a positive impact. And so I know there was one time a parent argued with me about I'm too scholarly for her child, but she said it to the principal in a way that she thought it would result in me being scolded. But in fact, the principal, thank goodness that they supported me and said, well, would you want anything less? And so that stemmed from that. I'm not holding kids to these restraints of where they say at this grade level, at this age, this is all they do. And then you do that and stop and you let the next grade do that. I immerse them in all kinds of experiences to see what they can grasp. And then we keep it rolling and moving with that. But also too, with the showing up, that meaning, my mannerisms, my interactions, I think it was always important that some people saw that I was very rigid in a way, and there was some rigidity to what I did, but I created a predictable practice because I wanted the students to not stress about what the day was going to bring. So that when you're sitting at breakfast and you see me through the glass walking down the hall, I have a couple minutes to finish up. I'm going to start finishing and cleaning up. When I get there to the table, that's a time where we're going to be gathering ourselves and getting in line with no resistance. As we get to as we get to the lockers and you have your things and you walk by, you need to be handing me something in my hand, which is in the form of homework or whatever it is. And then we also greet one another, your classmates, myself, and we come in, and then I would go through our predictable, agenda for the day. We would address any personal things that they may want to bring up that occurred or what they would like to see. And then we started off with whatever poem or focus that we were doing for that month. I usually had a monthly theme that was in the form of a poem, and not just reciting it, but we interpreted it. And so one of the last times, well, yeah, the last year I was in kindergarten classroom, but one of the last times they had learned 10, as we were in school for 10 months, these poems, and we took time to interpret them, and they were pretty intricate poems. But there was a student from another class who did something that kind of bothered one of the students in my line. And the students always said, I take care of you. I'm going to stand up for you, whatever. So they let me know this person did something that bothered them. They touched them or whatever. So rather than in passing saying, you cut that out, I always ask people, do you mind if I borrow? We bring it back, because I'm not just going to discipline and move on. The dignity part has to come in there in the lesson part. So I brought the child back to the classroom, and I had him, tell me what he did in his words. And we had a little back and forth about it. But then one of my students said, Mrs. Echols, we should teach him be yourself, because he seems to be trying to perform for his classmates instead of doing what's right. And they stood there and they recited it on cue, the entire poem, Be Yourself. The world would like to change you, there are pressures all around, blah, blah, went this long way. And so then I saw how, wow, I know that was my intent, but then they went that next level of being able to transfer the knowledge. They internalized it, but then also were able to transfer it to teach others. So what greater testament to what you learn when you can teach it to someone else? And so that just not only in that moment filled my heart, but that just kind of solidified the fact that everything I do, everything I say, how consistent I show up, how I'm connected to whatever content is that I'm doing, it matters. They see it. And if I can be consistent in being that model, then I know that they're able to pick up and do that as well. So that also keeps me personally in check. I profess to, when I get to my doorway, the threshold of my classroom doorway, whatever I dealt with, I leave that. And I'm coming into this space dedicated to them. So, it's just that mindfulness of how we carry ourselves, how we're presented, what my overall intent and goal is, and not to harm another person, not with my words, not with my deeds, not with my intentions. And so all that has to work melodically to have that outcome that I would like.
Wow. You said so many amazing things. It started bringing up for me culturally relevant customization. And like customization is something that I know we were talking about this earlier, but as you were talking, I'm literally watching and listening to hear how you customize learning so that the students can thrive. One of the most amazing things that and through discipline, and the students are able to even speak. It's not even all you. That's how you know you have that transformation in there. And I think about Everybody Educate, or this platform that I love to bring people on, is because everybody is educating. Even our students are educating each other. But it's based on what we're teaching them. It's based on what we're showing them as a teacher, as an educator, as a coach, as a whatever position we're in at that particular time. They are watching us. Or if it's the other teachers are watching you. They're like, okay, wait a minute. You shared some very valuable nuggets that show the purpose, that show your purpose through everything that you do and how you customize it for the students. And we started off this conversation talking about how cultural relevance, that's a checklist to many. And I know in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of data, and I have the data, so I'm not just talking outside of my mouth. I'm talking experience. There's a lot of data that shows culturally relevant practices and sustaining practices when done right, when done in truth and in heart, and when planned well, and when you actually love what you're doing and the students that you're working with, you can customize the learning so that they can thrive throughout life. And that, Candice, is what you do. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that in every situation you've been in, whether it's been teaching the students or teaching the teachers, or being a model or an example, or customizing a curriculum or whatever it is, you put all of that in there. And so I want you to speak to this next part. Like, what is a message that you would give to other people right now? You talked about what you do and how you do it. How can people apply some of these same things? They might be stuck right now trying to figure out, I don't really understand what this even means, cultural competence. I don't understand how to build a strong relationship with kids. I have all these checklist things that I must do. And in Pennsylvania right now, we are seeing like a lot of teacher shortage. We're seeing a lot of lack of teaching cultural responsiveness, and we're seeing some things, and we need help. What is your advice? And I'm here you go.
Sorry.
Go ahead, sorry.
And one of the first things I think of, because, again, as the years have turned, education has become a business. Okay. And so we're churning out these products. We want to sell them. Districts buy them. We push them out because we have to do them to make their investment, worthwhile. And so people get overwhelmed. And but I think one thing that I know I carry with me, I can't say I say it a lot, but I definitely jot it down periodically, is that many can have the pedagogy, but few have the heart and the art. And so this type of practice, you can't do without the art and heart. And so I think that once it's been transformed into like this business where now it's, they attach any awards with your performance and the numbers of your students that get by. That's when the integrity started to degrade, because people were all about the recognition, the awards you earn, the marking that you get earned for your school, star this, star that, whatever. And the integrity of the practice started to fizzle out. And so it doesn't matter what curriculum, what, budding artist and person is coming to visit. If you only have pedagogy, if you only know, and that is a stretch as well, knowing how how lesson flows and planning and all that, if that's all you have, that's probably only 1/4 of what you need to do. The other 2/4 is the art, where you need to know how to relate it, just like any art that we go to see. How do you bring somebody in to want to see and know better and be able to get their interpretation of what that is without changing the content of it? And then having it in your heart, because kids, but I would think most people, they can see when you're attached to something. They can see when you truly mean it. They can see when you don't even know it. There's a lot of people who get up in front, they don't know the content that they're teaching. That's why we have a lot of kids moving forth, not making the mark, because their foundational instruction was inaccurate. Just like one of the things that's like a pet peeve of mine that I feel like, I can't say that I knew it explicitly prior to becoming a kindergarten teacher, but just like when we add schwas to the end of sounds, and when we're teaching kids, like that's one of the first things I feel like, so we have to always be in that space where we're open to be able to say, I realize I don't know this. How can I build that? How can I strengthen that? Who can I go to help me do this better? How can I internalize this content so that then I don't have to rely on reading from the book or reading from a script to tell the student, and then later on when I reflect, if I even bother reflecting, because some people don't do that, at the end of their day, say, oh, I forgot to say this whole paragraph. And that really impacts the student's comprehension of the content. And so all three of those strands have to go together like a braid, and I feel like if somebody has the heart and the art of it, and you lack a little bit on the pedagogy, you would get farther than it being the opposite. And so with this being responsive, having that cultural competency, if we even break it down. So culture, sometimes people look at it so narrowly as just, what's your race background and all that. No, first, the cultures that I acknowledge is one, what ethnicity, not race, because somebody made that up, what ethnicity somebody's bringing to the space, because I know that's going to trickle down through the bloodline and show up in their life in some way, shape, or form. Then what's the culture of your household and your community, because we're always impacted by that. And then when we come in our space, we need to establish our culture in that space. So every year, my classroom culture could be slightly different based on the students that come into space. And so now, considering that, whereas maybe I have a child that comes from a background that's a large family, and maybe their ethnicity tends to kind of look at a tribal mindset of having large families. And so maybe their voice is smaller in some spaces. Maybe it's larger because they're trying to be heard amongst everybody. I take that into consideration. So I'm not going to get mad because every time this kid, yells out or they're just speaking loudly, if I have that awareness. So then how I would harness it is I'll make them the classroom crier, the announcement person, somebody that's able to speak, or you want to come up and then you give the review of what was done in that class so that they can use their voice correctly. And so then in my teaching, being responsive to that, I can say, let's learn the rules of conversation. So when we're conversing with someone else, it's a give and a take. You take a turn while I'm listening. I take a turn, then you listen. We're listening intently and not trying to plan for our next response. And so our tone could either put somebody off or draw them in. So when somebody's getting louder, I go lower, because now I want to let you know that you're getting a little bit too loud, but I'm not going to say anything to you. But if I'm excited about something, it's okay to be a little bit loud, or how close am I standing to you? So like all those things come from cultural cues. And so just always being mindful of things like that when I start. And then whatever that content is, I just feel like that circle is never complete until you give them reference to something personal. So we could be talking about, patterns or sorting or something. I'm sorry, I'm still in kindergarten, about sorting. And so, connecting it to when else do you sort? Because, students will push back, we didn't know this. But okay, if you happen to go help with the laundry, where does sorting come in at? Because you better not put those red, blue, and black socks in with my white socks. Okay, I'm not walking to school with some gray socks. So that's how, where this may be a time, or maybe about that pillow that's on the sofa that you really like, or the sheets, and then allow them to be able to pull out, okay, so this does have meaning. I see it every day here. So now I can replicate, or I can come up with my own. Or what other ways that it comes in, maybe the pattern or how we walk, or when I walk across the floor and the squeaks at certain spots. So really attaching to their heart. So then when they leave out with that content. And then they're able to come back, and then they'll start sharing, Miss Echols, I saw such and such at home, and this was a pattern, and this was a ABC pattern, and and it recycled 2 times, or and so they begin to get very technical with it. So that's what I mean. Just one little snippet, but some of us, we just don't take the time to go to drill down to those levels because we worry about following a sequence and a continuum where we need to be at a certain way. I will go much further making that connection than I would just moving through and having to cycle back to, now we went over patterns 3 months ago, let's go back and review, So that's what I mean by just being observant, making connections with, as though I want to have a relationship with them. I want to know about you. Anybody you enter in a relationship with, whatever kind of ship it is, you want to know things about them. because then you want to have something to talk about. You want to have shared experiences and things like that. So wanting to connect with them, giving them opportunities to be comfortable in what they know, and then you stretch them to be comfortable in the things that they don't know. And so, and we're used to it being on one direction, but I've definitely been getting a free education and it being the opposite. And that would probably be for a conversation for another time, but it applies the exact same way.
Wow, you gave so much meat, like literally so much meat. And you all who are watching this need to go back and just get your notepad out, pause, take notes. I wish you were my teacher. I wish you were my teacher when I was coming up. I really do. I wish you were my teacher when I was coming up. And I appreciate the intentionality behind everything that you do. So that's when you were talking earlier about how everything has meaning. It's such a beautiful thing. I wish we can continue on and talk about all types of stories all day. And you all need to look her up, connect with her, because she's dope. I try to tell y'all. And I'm going to ask you this one question. Just give me a brief answer around it, because it's going to take us left, and we are going to go there at some point. We definitely need a part 2, 3, and 4 with you. So being a Black educator is necessary and is needed to do those things, or just period? Do you think we need more? We need to diversify the teacher workforce in Pennsylvania?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I know like the immediate thought would be that, we want to see us in those role model positions and, things like that. But also at this stage in my life, and like I said, I know this is going to be that left turn, but I swear I'm just going to put the turn signal on, but I'm not actually going to turn. It's also that opportunity to infuse what's missing that represents us into the space. Not so much just being at the table. I know that's a very overused statement, because sometimes we get at the table and we change the taste buds. So it's not really keeping the flavor there. We go from the Lawry's to the iodized. But we need to be able to infuse not just our culture and background, but our knowledge, but it's also that time where we're in a position to tweak and change the messages that are coming out. I do want to give just notate one particular person who, over the last couple of years, I've been reading and following Dr. Gholdy Muhammad. Okay. And in one part of her book where it talked about like the literary societies back, because some people think like Black folk, brown folk are just getting literate now. But back when we had literary societies, not only was it just about learning to read, but then it was gaining information. So a lot of their gatherings were centered around newspaper articles, things that are happening in current events and all that. But then that next step goes to the critical lens, the criticality part. So then you don't just ingest anything just because it's written. So then they began to use a critical lens on what was written. And then that's when they built their understanding and the defense of what's incorrect, what's inaccurate. And that way, when they go out and present themselves, they're able to stand in their footing on a debate. And so how I translate that into the classroom is one that I always tell students, this is a forum where if you have a question, comment, concern, you have the floor. I tell them all the time, this is customer service. Every time they raise their hand and say, how may I help you? Because that is how I view it. This is a service business. I'm here to serve. And so it's important for me to get feedback. And so building in them, and again, there's some spaces where kids are quick to jump on it and other spaces where they're very apprehensive about it. But that right there begins to build their comfort level with being critical of things. And critical does not equate disrespectful. It's just meaning I want to dissect something. I want to check the accuracy of it. And then I want to respond back with, my opinions, my thoughts, or any corrections. And so, again, utilizing that for myself personally in my practice. So as I'm reading through some curriculum or I read a book, I'm like, I don't like that they chose these characters to illustrate on this particular part of the story. Let me swap this around. So I'm now in a position to not constantly churn these inaccuracies and this curriculum violence is another term that's out there now, but this curriculum violence by utilizing these things that seem very unintentional or seem very unthoughtful, but really are implanted there to keep a particular storyline that way. And so I think it's important for us to be in the places so that we can do that, if not just on our small scale and impacting the children that are in our rooms in front of us, but also on a wider scope. So again, that's for another time, but yeah.
That was perfect. And what you just demonstrated, that is the art. I put 3 secrets to successfully teaching culturally responsive education from Candice. And what I heard today in this interview was the heart, the art, and the pedagogy. They all need to be there. All of those sauces all of those ingredients should be in the sauce to really make it work. And you know what? People have to get to that space. And there has to be an opportunity in our schools, in our districts, to start to shift this whole notion that we just have to teach what's there. I love how you talked about pulling in, taking out, and my grandma said this all the time, I say it all the time, taking the meat and spitting out the bone. I love how you said, I'm gonna still follow these standards. I'm gonna still go. I know that this education system was built in a systemic way. And I'm just being honest and truthful, in a way that's not always built for all of our students or all of our students of color. And just like you said, that social construct that came up when we talk about race and all, those things were created on purpose. So on purpose, we must intentionally go into our curriculums and analyze them. Think about what's the why behind what we're doing. And that's where we put our heart in it. So I'm speaking to educators, and Candice is speaking to educators right now to say, hey, y'all have to advocate. You have to kind of come out of what you're just told to do and actually analyze, is this good for all of my students? In me teaching this, am I perpetuating something that's further leaving our students in a space where like, this is not even for you. This doesn't even relate to your life. How am I actually educating you? Education is really making sure that you can use this outside of here. You guys have heard I get so excited about this. So you have heard many of the stories that Candice shared today of how you can customize, analyze, and then go in and advocate for what the students need. And you make it happen. You make it happen. You might get some backlash at times, but this is you mentioned it earlier, Candice. It is about our children. We are seeing the data, how many students are just checked out. We see the data where teachers are checked out. So I asked that question because it all plays a role. It's not enough for us to just go in there and say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, we're just going to do this curriculum the way it needs to be. No, it's saying, what works in here and what doesn't work in here? And how does that connect to me? Do I have biases? Do my students see me seeing them? By the way I plan, by the way I show up, by even, being a model. I feel like even as a Black woman, I'm isolated race, as a Black woman in America where, I did not see that growing up. I didn't see a representation of my own culture in the classroom from K all the way up. I didn't see it. And I created it. I had to create it. So now, Candice, this question I want to leave us with as we close is going to kind of go with your mission now, and what you're doing in and outside of the classroom, because we believe that everybody is educating inside and out, and we need to do it in excellence. We really do. And so there is I don't know if you heard of it, Chapter 49. If you've heard of that, they are in PA. They are it's I don't know if it's a law or a requirement just yet, and I'm just going to share it with you briefly because it's going to lead the way to maybe you giving us some advice on how we go about this. There are it's Chapter 49, and it's a recommendation, and it's now in Pennsylvania. There was actually a news article that I want to play. I don't know if the first, I'll share it on my screen. And these competencies are now, they might become a law. We're hoping that they do, because they speak to a mandate for people to do the things you described today. Because as an option, many people don't take it, and we just keep going. But then there's a news article where there's some schools in Pennsylvania who are going against it. So I want to highlight that right now. So I don't know if you can see my screen. Let's just see if we can pull that up. Yeah, here it goes here. Okay. Share. All right. So on my screen, ignore the side. Okay, let's put that out of there. So the competencies, it's kind of small, but I'll just give you guys a brief, and I want Candice to respond because I'm really interested in your thoughts on this. They're culturally relevant and sustaining education recommendations, and there's toolkits for them. And basically there's 9 competencies. The first one is reflect on one's cultural lens. The second one is identify and deepen the understanding and take steps to address biases in our system. This connects to what you were saying today. And there's lots underneath it, right? I'm not going to get into all that. Number 3, design and facilitate culturally relevant learning that brings real world experiences into educational spaces. You spoke about that today, about how your children were going home, taking what they learned from you and be able to apply it at home and with their parents, come back and want to even learn even more. And you've seen the engagement. You talked a lot about competency 3. 4, promote asset-based perspectives about differences. 5, that's 5, sorry. 6, collaborate with families. You talked today so much about how you went into, like, your parents knew you. They knew where we're going, like the families, and having authentic engagement. All of these things are everything, guys, that Candice has mentioned. So it behooves me that there are people that are fighting against this, and we're trying to make our students better. We're trying to make our education better. But this is the world we live in. Candice, and then I'll tell you the last 2, and then Candice, go ahead and take it away. Communicate in linguistically and culturally responsive ways that demonstrate respect for learners, educators, educational leaders, and families. And finally, the last 2, establish high expectations for each learner and treat them as capable and diverse and diversify, where capable and diverse and deserving. Treat them as capable and deserving of that education that they're receiving, that achievement and that success. And finally, educate your own self about my microaggressions and the impacts that we could actually bring into the space and further damage our like students in these spaces to not be ready for the real world. What is your take on all of that? I'm gonna stop my screen share, and let's get you to the table on that final note there.
I was gonna say you could have kept it up, but I'm getting it only because I'm hoping to not lose my train of thought. But so the first thing that comes to mind is, and this was another, it may seem disconnected, but it'll connect. So this came up in several other conversations kind of discussing this. And we talk about having policies. We always are creating policies here. All kinds of businesses create policies. You can have all the policies in the world. It's the people who have to carry them out if they're on board and willing to do it. And so my example was right after COVID and the plane airlines and hotels that say, oh, we have new COVID specific cleaning practices and sanitize and XYZ. And yet one of the first days that I had after going to COVID, and I happened to walk in the bathroom, there was dry vomit. Okay. And so that stuck in my head as, see, that's exactly what I mean. You can create all these rules and policies and practices and procedures in the world, but who's the gatekeeper on who is hired and who's in the positions to do these things? And so immediately when you were talking, I had to try to hurry up and scribble it down so I wouldn't forget. My first thought is, especially in the current situation where I am, we think about the diversity of the workforce, and then also how the workforce aligns or misaligns with the student body. And so we have to be mindful when we're talking about these things, these points, the people who are in front of students, if they represent the masses, what has always been the mainstream or the advantaged space, what would be their reasoning or their call to change and do these? So that was my first thing. And then the second thing, where it still goes back to wanting relationship with kids, it would be shocking to some people not in the industry to know that there are countless people in spaces where we are impacting children who don't like the kids. So many comments about their homes, their families, their hygiene, all the negative things. Or even as a coach, how I used to say, we need to stop being so quick to say, well, the children can't, and realize what the other factors that are involved. It's the children in the space, it's the curriculum, and it's the deliverer. We need to assess all of those factors. And so when we have these coming down, they're good and all. I mean, from what I can see at the surface, but we have to get to how we can move the hearts of the people in front. And this is just to end it. It's kind of circled me back to what I started off with when I was at Penn State. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with Central Pennsylvania. And just if you're not, at the time that I went to Penn State, it was during the sit-ins. And some of those people who were residents of that fraternity row used to walk around, their pledges used to walk around in afro wigs and blackface during pledging seasons, and doing all kinds of despicable things to dummies that they had wigs on hanging from their trees. And you know, the fact that when we were trying to sign up for certain classes, maybe hiking and all that, the disclaimer was given is that there are KKK chapters in the area and they can ensure our safety. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. So anyway, within that space, during one of my education courses, several students in the space said they didn't come to Penn State to just get a job in the inner city. And so when we talk about, just if I just freeze it right there and don't even go into the other conversation, that's mindset. Because if things don't work out the way they plan them and get in districts where they want, where do they end up coming? To the inner city, in front of students that don't look like them, that they're not accustomed to, that they just completely don't like. And what do you think the messaging would be that comes out? And so we do all this work, and it's not for naught, a policy and coming with all this, but we need to find a better way at the training level, at the interviewing level, and even once you bring somebody in, of being able to monitor or grow, even cultivate even the hearts of teachers to want to do this work, or else we're going to continue to injure the children that are in front of us.
Well said. And that is exactly, I always stand on that truth. This is why we're so connected. And I've seen the like how you sustain that heart for the work through the years. I've known you for many years, but even before I even have known you, just to hear your story, you're right. Like it is about the heart. There's policies and there's things. Now, I feel like this policy gets us a little bit closer to what I'm hearing you even talk about. But you're right. It's about, and it's funny. I just was on another podcast.
And I want to say one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't know if I was muted or not.
No.
Oh, but when you talked about how some schools were already fighting against it, if you look those up, find where they're located, and look at the composition, I think you'll find some alignment in why particular ones are fighting back.
You know what? No, I love it. All relative to. I was just on another podcast and we were talking about, the culturally relevant and sustaining competencies and practices. And one thing I said, honestly, I kind of said similar to what you said. This is why I was like, this is crazy. I was like, honestly, we have the tools, we have the people, but we don't have the hearts or the commitment of the people that we like. We don't have the hearts. What did I say? I said, like, we don't have the commitment.
It's the core beliefs.
Yeah.
The core beliefs are in alignment.
It's not going to work. So it's going to continue to turn back to a checklist that we now have. Now, I'm glad this is a start, but this is not the end all be all. This is the mean. What do they say? The means to the end.
And yeah.
But we've got to do what I heard Candice say today, you guys, if you're listening, where is your heart? This is why I say everybody should not be an educator. I'm sorry, but then at the same time, I say this: everybody is an educator because you're educating somebody. You're teaching your children something to perpetuate things. You teaching your business people something about what you stand for and what you don't stand for in the workplace. You're upholding something. So everybody is educating, but we must do it with excellence. And with excellence goes back to Candice's 3 points. Heart, art, and with proper pedagogy, like how you treat somebody doesn't matter. How you do this does matter. I know people who do this work and they don't connect because they don't have the art. It's an art to this. Like you might have a heart and passion to see change in the world, and you might know the steps. But if you can't connect that with a way that you care about humanity, you care about the children in front of you, you treat them babies like they're your babies. Or if you're a leader and you're in a workspace, you treat those adults like with respect and dignity and respect the fact that maybe people are coming in at different spaces and you won't have the intentionality to say, you know what, how do I leverage the strengths in these places? So that if they see you doing that, they can then do that with their kids.
It's cultivating. Cultivating is different. It's a totally different spin on when we cultivate something, we put in the time, the energy, the resources. Just we think about a plant and we want to make sure that soil is primed for that particular seed. We make sure we pull out any weeds that's going to impede its growth. We make sure we put it on a schedule of feeding and watering. We prune away anything that's dead and sapping out energy that goes to a useless place. And then we, provide it safety from any predators that want to feed off of it prematurely. And then we pick it when it's primely ripe. And so that's cultivating. And that's what we need to do to anyone that is under our care and tutelage, whether it be children or adults, and then that's another thing as well. Like it's a slightly different learning science when it comes to adults, but those of us who are in leadership have to also be mindful and aware of that, And so you're right. Everybody does educate. I used to say that to the parents all the time. And I would tell them, I want you to have more influence over your child than me. They will only see me for 180 days. And right now I'm still a stranger to them, but I am here for a purpose and I'm going to impart this knowledge on them so that they can be prepared. But hopefully you can carry out what they're learning and make it applicable and make it important so that they can continue to practice.
Okay, we got to end, but we can go on and on and on because there's so much work to be done. And we do have We have the answer. We've gone through the many things. And when you were talking about cultivating, that's the action word right now. Everybody, did you all hear that? Cultivate. What does it mean to cultivate? Think about a farmer, think about land. Let's go. It is time to cultivate those culturally relevant and sustaining educational practices, not just keep talking about them, have a checklist. And as we go out, like, I really want us to remember that. Like, ask yourself that question. Are you cultivating it? Everybody educate. This is my business here, and I provide a platform for dope and amazing educators who are doing that. Candice Echols is doing that in and outside of her life. I'm in her life in the classroom. So excellence, equitable practices so that everybody wins. Are you creating a winning classroom? Are you creating a winning life? So I want to transition as we close now. We really are closing now. Into how this translates in your life. I want you to tell us about your businesses. I love it with you and your husband, your business, and the things that you all do and how you cultivate a winning life with your family, not just what you share with us in the classroom, because this is an example of what I represent. And I don't want to talk to anybody else anymore unless they're doing the work. Because we cannot keep perpetuating a system.
Yeah.
It needs to be thrown out. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
How does this look in your life outside of the classroom?
I'll be very succinct. So again, just kind of lay the background. I'm in education. My husband is not. And so at the time when I wanted to change directions in education, how I was in educating people, because I saw a need of how students were going out of school and not being personally prepared to keep up with their finances and didn't even know what bank account was and all that. So I acquired my MBA so I can be a personal finance teacher. This was back in 2009. And so when I said, I'm just going to push myself and I'm going to start a company. CNL Echols Integrity Enterprises, LLC. And I'm not about doing it in a silo because I'm attached to my husband. So I said, how do you see yourself fitting in this? I don't know. Well, what are you good at? What would you like to do? And he named those things. I said, okay, now let's make a business from that. Just to get that practice. It's not so much of having success in the viewpoint as the larger society sees it, how much money you make. It was merely about building skill, building confidence, setting a goal out there that you have to move toward to attain. And so over the years, we've kind of developed this little conglomerate of businesses where right now most of our energy goes into our garment customization. My husband does embroidery, and I have a shirt customization where I call fifth chakra tees. And so again, fifth chakra talks about your throat chakra, being open, honest in your communication. And so in some places where we're not able to use our words because of that, then I speak on a shirt. So that's how that was born about. And again, it always stems back to the integrity piece, what my overall goals and desires are in teaching people. And so I just found a creative outlet to be able to do that. So right now, what I finally am pushing myself to do, I know, Robin, you're well aware of this because we've talked over the years, but I never want to just do anything without purpose. And I'm not a social media person, just get on there and start saying things. But now, you know what I said, if one ear hears something important in what I have to say, then I've taught someone. So I am going to just begin to, share some things through experience about education, but mostly my focus is on advocacy. And it starts with self-advocacy, but it also moves to the advocacy of others. I think about the lens that I'm in as a fat Black woman that's physically disabled and health impaired, that there are so many lenses and so many platforms that I have to fight for what I deserve in. And so that's been putting that practice of advocacy in place where you have to be willing to speak up for yourself and call out wrongs just to try to make them right. So as I grow, I'm sure we'll team up again, Robin, and then have something a little bit more solid for people to refer to. But right now, Integrity Foundations is where I'm beginning. And you can find me Candice Echols or Integrity Foundations on Facebook. And I'll build my way up to the other platforms. And also, I just want to end with my views and my opinions are my own, and I'm not representative of any entities that I'm connected with.
Thank you, Candice. I appreciate the opportunity to host your brilliance. I know you're like, oh, I'm just starting. You've been doing so many things. You have so much depth to you, and I'm excited that you are taking even this next level to speaking up and advocating for others, and that can connect to your experiences. It's just a beautiful thing. I will definitely have you on here more. I'm super excited. I feel better about how about my audience and the teachers and the people that I'm listening and working with and who are in my platform. I feel better that they can teach with truth and with purpose through cultivated, culturally responsive education because of this conversation with you today, Candice. Thank you so much for offering your time, your energy, your expertise, your truth. If there's like a word or two that you would leave us with so that that can ring in our spirits, I would love it if you can just close us out with a word or phrase to the people. Oh, and let me make sure you're off mute.
Sure. So this new season was marked with an event in mind before, but moving forward, my word is unmuted. Unmuted. I'll just keep it at that.
I love it. I love it. Unmuted. There we go. So go ahead, guys. Be free to be unmuted. Let's go. Thank you, Candice.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Check her out, guys, on Integrity Foundations. Go to Candice Echols. I will put in the chat where you can find her. I'll put a link to her chat so you can hit her up. If you need anything, you heard that her and her husband have several businesses, honey. After we get off here, we're about to finish talking about these shirts because I need some stuff. Listen. Come on, promote.
Wait. Real quick, just because it's still right here. Hold on, I can't get it the right way.
There you go. Other way, yeah. Right there, yeah.
Okay, find it. Here we go.
Oh, that is beautiful. Hit her up. Support my sister. This is what we do. This is why I have this platform, hosting brilliance, honey, inside and outside of the classroom, so that we can have winning classrooms and winning lives. All right, guys. Bye.